Hey friends, welcome to Abundant Life 360 podcast. We're so excited you're joining us today. We're here to help you get healthy and stay healthy mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. We will walk with you as you discover what works best to live a balanced life. Now is your time to find freedom on your wellness journey. So let's get started and check out today's episode. Welcome to our Abundant Life 360. And we love Abundant Life 360. And today we're talking about the skinny on GLP-1s. A lot of people call them the weight loss drugs, the good, the bad, the unknown, and cautions associated with this category of weight loss drugs. Many of you know our speakers. Charlotte Davis is a registered dietitian, nutrition, a licensed dietitian, and Susan Ficken is an MS nurse, MSN, RN, and she's also, I actually don't know what FNP-BC. She'll have to tell us what that means. So I'm going to turn it over to Susan. She's going to take over right now. Unmute Susan and take it away.
Thank you, Helen. And thank you, everybody, for being online with us. And FNP-BC means Family Nurse Practitioner Board Certified. That's how they tell us we have to report our credentials. So I am retired from being a nurse practitioner. So tonight I'm going to go over the medical basics of the GLP-1s. And then Charlotte's going to go over the nutritional aspects. And then we both are going to try to add our own unique First Place for Health perspectives on the topic. So if you could put up slide 1, Helen.
Sure.
What does GLP-1 mean? So it means glucagon-like peptide 1, which is a naturally occurring hormone that our bodies make. It helps to regulate our blood sugar levels, helps to regulate our appetite and our digestion. And so the drugs work by augmenting or helping our body's own GLP-1 to be more effective. And so the drugs have the effect to help lower our blood sugar. They signal our brains that the stomach is full. They help reduce our appetite. They slow stomach emptying, which increases feelings of fullness. And then all those things together will typically end up in weight loss. And so if you could go to slide 2, Helen. Let's see if it comes up. There are 3 FDA-approved GLP-1 drugs for weight loss. And they are Wegovy, which is semaglutide. It's a once-weekly injection. Zepbound is tirzepatide, which is a once-weekly injection. And Saxenda, which is liraglutide, which is a once-daily injection. So we don't see Saxenda being used very much. We don't hear much about it because it's a daily injection instead of weekly, and because it's less effective than the other medications. And what you don't see here, I'm sure many of you have noticed, is that we don't see Ozempic and Mounjaro here. And that's because those 2 medications are FDA approved for the use in type 2 diabetes. But these are the medications that are approved by the FDA for use in weight loss alone. So Ozempic has the same active ingredient as Wegovy, and Mounjaro has the same active ingredient as Zepbound, but the doses for these drugs that are given for weight loss are higher than the doses of the medications that are given for type 2 diabetes. And we do see a greater level of effectiveness for weight loss with those higher doses. We want you to be aware that there is a lot of off-label use of these medications out there. And I think that it's important that if you have been recommended to consider one of these, that you know exactly what they're approved for, and that you know what the recommended dosing schedule is supposed to be based on scientific research. Over the last several years, the demand for the GLP drugs outpaced the supply, and the FDA allowed compounded forms of the drugs to be sold, even though those individual compounded agents were not FDA monitored or approved. This allowance for the compounded drugs ended at the end of April this year, but it appears that you can still access them from online sources, and there appears to be prescribing loopholes through which you can probably still get the compounded versions. Both the American Diabetes Association and the Obesity Action Coalition have issued statements against the use of the compounded medications. Also to be avoided until more studies are done are off-labeling dosing schedules like microdosing and intermittent use. I recently read an article about the huge array of unresearched dosing recommendations that are out there. And it's to the extent that the author of the article said, folks, it's like the Wild West out here. So there are all kinds of recommendations on dosing that are being made that have not been studied. So because of this lack of regulation with the compounded medications and the lack of scientific evidence behind the unregulated dosing schedule, First Place for Health's position at this time is that the compounded forms of the drug are to be avoided, as well as unstudied dosing schedules. So another issue with obtaining GLP-1s is that they are widely available online. And some of these suppliers even tout that, hey, you can do a 2-minute online visit and you'll get your prescription. So while this may seem handy and efficient, First Place for Health's position is that if you are considering a GLP-1, you should do so with an established healthcare provider who can see you in person, who can take a comprehensive health history on you, who can do an in-person physical exam. You cannot listen to somebody's lungs, their heart, feel their pulses in an online visit. You should also have updated labs done, and the person seeing you should do a very comprehensive review of the medications that you're on. And then you should also expect that healthcare provider to be following up with you on a regular basis so they can assess for your response to the medications, assess for any potential side effects, and also that if you have a problem, that you can receive timely assistance from that office if you need to. So I'm going to go to slide 3 now. And we told you we were going to talk about the good and the bad and the unknown. So there is good with these. There's a lot of good with these medications. They are very effective. The research shows that there is an average of 10 to 25% of body weight lost over approximately a year. And that's average. So reports span up to 35% and more. It's also thought that the use of these medications may help change the incidence of many conditions, including heart disease, diabetes, stroke, even possibly Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases, chronic kidney disease, substance abuse disorders, sleep apnea, and potentially others. But it is going to take years to decades to see if this is indeed going to be the case. I've already read articles speculating about the great reduction in healthcare costs that might happen because of the reduction of these other conditions. But again, that's going to take years to see. The next slide is the not so good. So with any medication, you have the potential for adverse effects. And the GLP-1s are no exception. In fact, the side effect profile is fairly high at 10 to 30% of users being affected, and that goes up to 45% in some studies with specific agents. The side effects are mainly GI, nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, constipation. There have been very rare instances of severe side effects, such as bowel blockages, but those have been actually really very rare. One of the negative aspects of taking these medications is the next item that we're going to talk about here, and I'm very concerned about it, and it is the loss of lean muscle mass. Approximately 26 to 39% of the weight that is lost on the GLP-1s is lean muscle mass. So I want you to be aware that when you lose weight on these medications, you're not losing all fat. In fact, as you see those numbers, somewhere between 1/4 to over 1/3 of the weight that is lost is lean muscle mass. And so that puts us at a risk of sarcopenia, which is the medical term for muscle mass loss. And with sarcopenia, we know that we will have a decrease in basal metabolic rate. And that means that your body requires fewer calories for basic life functions, even at rest. Then we also are concerned about decreased muscle strength, function, and endurance. There's an increased risk of falls with sarcopenia, as well as reduced bone density, which can cause an increased risk of osteoporosis and fractures. And lastly, there are contraindications to the use of any drug class. And the contraindications for the use of the GLP-1s are what we hear on the commercials. It's a family or personal history of medullary thyroid disease, certain neoplasias, a history of pancreatitis, and a history of reaction to any of the components of any of these medications. Just a few more words about the lean muscle mass loss. Because these risks are so significant, we must be proactive in minimizing those effects through diet and exercise. Adequate protein intake is essential. First Place for Health's My Place for Nutrition, which was written by my co-presenter, Charlotte, is a great resource that you can use to figure out how much protein you need in a day's time. And also, following the recommended exercise requirements of 150 minutes per week of moderate exercise, or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise, as well as at least 2 sessions of weight training, at least 20 minutes in length, are what is recommended to help prevent that muscle mass loss. So protein and exercise. Now, before I turn this over to Charlotte, I wanted to add just a personal thought that is not from the scientific research, but it's from my personal experience with First Place for Health and with my own weight struggles. I lived under a bondage to food and eating for virtually all of my life, and that's including childhood. It wasn't until participating in First Place for Health, which I started in 2016, that I was convicted to bring God into these struggles. And He allowed victory over and freedom from those food and eating strongholds. And that freedom is much more valuable and miraculous to me than the 38 pounds that I lost. I learned that I could not fight a spiritual battle with unspiritual weapons. And so we at First Place want to make sure that we're here to walk with you in these struggles that you have, like I've had. And be it if they're struggles of mind, body, soul, or spirit, and whether you choose to take a weight loss medication or not. We want you to have the victory, and we want to help you in your in your walk, in your journey. So thank you, and we'll turn it over to Charlotte.
Thank you so much, Susan, for helping us all understand the medical side of weight loss medications. You went through so much information to give this to us, and I really, really appreciate it. And I know that our participants do as well. And I really appreciate you sharing your personal story as well. God has used the First Place for Health focus on all four areas of wellness: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, to change so many lives out there over the past 44 years since they started in Houston, Texas. And God has helped bring healing and wholeness to so many people. I'm thankful to Him for the balance that it has helped me to forge in my own life as well. Knowledge about nutrition is good, but it's not enough. I needed God to help me with that struggle. And I think that that's a lot of people are looking for a way to fill that hole and figure out what that is. And so hopefully they'll consider us. But okay, now to talk a little bit about the nutrition related aspects of taking weight loss medications. Since they're still relatively new, there's still minimal research, and you've heard Susan say it, and I'm going to say it over and over. There's going to need to be a lot more done. So there's very minimal research out there reported on the impact of these medications when it comes to nutritional adequacy or nutrition intake. There's still just a lot going on with that. So hopefully we will hear more about that in the future. But we do know that most people taking them have considerably reduced appetite and hunger, which contributes to the decreased calorie consumption that's necessary for weight loss. So calories in, calories out, still is in effect there. So as a result, there's a need for nutrition counseling to shift from eat less, which is what it was when before you were on the medication, just trying to eat less was the biggest part of the battle. But with these medications, it's more about now eating adequate nutrition when you do eat, because the healthy eating patterns and the overall lifestyle changes still need to be there. And so in other words, due to the overall loss of appetite, we're going to need to be much more intentional about getting the best nutrition, the best bang for our buck when we eat. So there may be a tendency to turn to foods that with the most flavor. I've heard a lot of anecdotal things with people on these medications that they want things that are sweet or salty or, fried foods, things that have a lot of flavor, especially if they associate some of the other foods with tastelessness or nausea, especially in the early stages of when they start the medications, before they adjust to the medications, especially. So there's just so much of a need to focus on getting nutrient-dense foods during this time. So what are the general nutrition guidelines while taking obesity medications? Helen, if you would put that first slide up there for me, it's just going to have some general information. As far as calories, the nutrition professionals for best practices are saying that 12 to 1500 calories for women and 15 to 1800 calories for men are what's recommended in order to get all the nutrients that you need. A lot of times people are getting less calories than that. And so sometimes there's going to be a need to try to get people to eat more than they feel like eating, just because they need to get the nutrition that's in these calories. So 12 to 1500 for women and 15 to 1800 for men. Protein, and I'm just going to give you the macronutrients. That's their big hot buzzword right now. What macros do you need to get? And so I've listed that as it pertains to weight loss and GLP-1 medications. Macros: protein is 10 to 35% of your calories, carbohydrates 45 to 55% of your calories, and fat 20 to 35% of your calories. I'll talk a little bit more about protein on the next slide. But fluid is very, very critical. So in a day, 2 to 3 liters of fluid. And you might recognize this cup amount: 9 to 13 cups of water is where it's recommended that we get most of our fluid. And so on our First Place trackers, it's listed there. Women need 9 cups, men need 13 cups. So we're going right along with what's being recommended. And fiber, 21 to 25 grams a day for women and 30 to 38 grams a day for men. And these are both super critical, the fluid and the fiber, because if you may remember Susan mentioning that one of the side effects of these medications is constipation. And on her first slide, she mentioned delayed gastric emptying, which makes you feel full. So that delayed gastric emptying into your intestines is also going to create more possibility of constipation because it's taking longer to go through your system. So this fluid is very important and fiber is very important. And I do want to say on the fiber, you want to increase it gradually. If you're not used to eating a lot of fiber, like in this range, then you might want to be very careful because your body takes a little bit to adjust to that. And you don't want to have negative gastrointestinal effects from overdoing it too quickly. There are also no recommendations that are standard about fiber supplements, however, because we can get plenty of fiber from our food, and most physicians do not recommend a fiber supplement in this situation. I also wanted to mention on the carbohydrates that sometimes you'll hear from primary care physicians or different people that they recommend a very low carbohydrate diet, but the research is not behind that. In fact, restriction is recommended that you don't do any restriction, that you do this level, the 45 to 55% of your calories from carbohydrate. And it can actually be harmful to your kidneys. If you get too much protein and not enough carbohydrate, your kidneys can be in a little bit of distress. So we don't want to create problems. Next slide, Helen. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about protein. Susan mentioned this as well, the importance of getting enough protein and getting enough exercise to maintain that lean body mass. So the recommended dietary allowance is 0.37 grams of protein per pound of weight. And the general recommendation is 60 to 80 grams per day. For some reason out in social media, there's like 100 grams being thrown around all over the place. All the time I hear that and see that. But that's really not, it's very individual based on each person, and that 100 is too much for women most of the time. So in general, 60 to 80 grams per day. And you want to include protein foods with each meal or snack, and that just helps with keeping your blood sugars stable and keeping you full in between. Helps along with that because protein digests at a little bit different rate. And one of the articles I read recently, we definitely want to keep our blood sugars in control. Even if we're not diabetic, it can affect us if we take obesity medications that lower blood sugar. Because if you remember, the first thing they were given for was to keep blood sugars down for diabetics, and now they're approved for weight loss. So there are increased emergency room visits on this last study that I read for people who are taking the medications that aren't even diabetic, but they're having low blood sugar episodes. So this is something to definitely consider when you're taking those medications. So keep those protein foods with each meal and snack. You want to consume the protein foods first when you're eating. So that way you kind of make sure that you get those down, and then it also helps with absorption when those are followed up with carbohydrate foods and vegetables and fruits, things like that. So you may have had a friend, or maybe you have had a gastric surgery, such as a gastric sleeve or gastric bypass. This is a very common recommendation with that type of dietary pattern after those surgeries, is to have some protein and have it first before the other things. And so that might be something you have heard before. The last one on this slide, protein supplements are not usually recommended. For some reason, a lot of people feel like that's the first thing you should go to when you hear about you need more protein, but you need adequate protein. Not too much it can be harmful. So, like we mentioned, on your kidneys can be difficult. Okay, the good news is that our Live It food plan has a macronutrient range of approximately 50% carb, 20% protein, and 30% fat. So if you've been following the First Place for Health food plan, eating all the food groups in all the amounts recommended, then you're actually following this already. All those numbers I was giving you earlier, you're already doing it. So you can feel safe with that you're following current health recommendations, not only for GLP-1s, but just in general for the population. So you're doing really good with that. And another note that I wanted to make is and Helen, if you could put that next slide up, this is just interesting information to me. According to the 2015 Healthy Eating Index, it shows that the populations of people that are eligible for weight loss medical treatment for weight loss, whether it be for the surgeries or for the medications, this population of people are more likely to have poor diet quality to start with. And some interesting totals here. 9 in 10 do not meet whole grain recommendation and they exceed sodium recommendations. 9 in 10 do not meet vegetable recommendations. 4 in 5 do not meet fruit recommendations. 3 and 4 exceed saturated fat and refined grain recommendations. And then finally, 2 and 3 exceed added sugar recommendations. So people that are starting to take these medications are oftentimes already not eating well. And so nutrition education is going to be at the tip top of the need for when they start decreasing the amount that they're eating to make sure that they do get that bang for their buck, that they do get the things that they need. So getting that nutrition information is vital, and First Place for Health can really help with that. So we have lots of good materials about how to eat a healthy, balanced dietary pattern overall. So one more thing I wanted to mention, to assure nutrition adequacy during medication therapy like this, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is the professional organization for dietitians like me, they highly recommend that clients be provided with guidance by a registered dietitian. And so that they can check for if you're getting enough protein, if you're getting enough hydration, fiber, and other nutrient needs. They can also counsel you if you are having problems with those side effects that Susan was talking about, the nausea, the vomiting, the diarrhea. They can help you with making a plan for dealing with that and adjusting to that so that you do maintain your nutrition status. So as medication treatment continues, there's also a potential, just like with any form of weight loss, any weight loss plan that you might be on, there's the potential for the slowing rate of weight loss and the amount of weight loss. So at the beginning of the period of time when you're starting on the medications, and you might see a lot more weight loss than you do as time goes on, it slows down, just like with following traditional types of weight loss programs. And in fact, most clients are counseled about that when they first begin the medications, that this is going to happen. You're going to lose more in the beginning and then it's going to slow down. And then they often tell you too that it's expected that you will gain some weight back at the end, especially if you do not incorporate some of those other habits that we were talking about, and with the exercise and all those sorts of things. So many people that take the medications, this is something that keeps popping up everywhere, all the articles I'm reading. And at this point, no research on this, but this comes up all the time in anecdotal things that I'm reading. The people taking the medications describe a quieting of what they're calling food noise, the constant thoughts that they have about the desire to eat. While this could be cited as a benefit, some nutrition counseling professionals are concerned that the medications are just temporarily sort of masking the unfinished work that their clients have in dealing with their relationship with food. And just as a personal story, at a recent conference for registered dietitians, I sat by a young dietitian who works exclusively with people on weight loss medications in a clinic. And the clinic's plan that they have for the clients is that they will finish their course of medication in 2 years, that the people will lose the amount of weight that they should lose and then be able to go off the medication in 2 years, sort of weaned off, increase it and then gradually decrease it. However, she and her colleagues have noticed that their clients voice fear of going off the medications, with some even making sure that they don't reach the goals that are set so that they can stay on them. And that was really concerning to her, and it concerns me too. And I hope that research doesn't show that this is very, very common, but that was a concerning thing. But therefore, as mentioned earlier, it's not only important to focus on meeting nutrient needs and an overall healthy eating pattern when taking these medications, we also need to be establishing some overall lifestyle and behavior modifications for the long term, planning for when the person stops taking the medication. Counseling remains the same as with any other area of weight loss or weight management, just like we teach with the First Place for Health program. The most current research shows that eating patterns associated with weight maintenance include things like regular breakfast consumption, regular self-monitoring, or in First Place for Health, we call that tracking, right? So increased vegetable consumption and increased fiber consumption, along with regular physical activity, the guidelines for which Susan mentioned earlier. And these are all the things that we talk about in our First Place for Health groups all the time. And I know the increased vegetable consumption is something that I promote constantly. It's a struggle because people, like that data mentioned earlier, they're not used to eating adequate fruits and vegetables. And so trying to get those in so that they get the adequate nutrition and the fiber is very interesting. And one more thing I wanted to mention about some recent research. I recently heard that current research shows that the more physically active we are, the more tightly appetite is coupled with energy expenditure. In other words, the more active we are, the more we tend to eat when we are actually hungry. We recognize those food cues, hunger cues. Being highly sedentary, what some of us might be called a couch potato, that increases the chance of dysregulation of your appetite, or eating just to be eating, kind of out of habit, out of boredom, those sort of things, rather than responding to hunger cues. So there's another benefit of physical activity that I thought I would share. One of the doctors who presented at a recent webinar that I was watching for some continuing education credit, he made a statement that I wanted to share with you. He said, and if you could put this up, Helen, this was just so good. I wanted to share it with you. Because on average, these medications are highly effective for weight loss, the focus of physical activity should not be additional weight loss. Rather, we must posit that physical activity is important for body composition, cardiorespiratory fitness, muscle strength and endurance, physical function, and quality of life. And then you have his credentials down there. But I just thought, what a wonderful emphasis on physical activity. It's not punishment for being overweight. It's needed for us to stay healthy and have that wonderful, full, abundant life and with our healthy bodies that God designed us to have. In conclusion, the First Place for Health program can play a vital role in the lives of people taking these GLP-1 medications. Our ministry at First Place for Health provides a comprehensive approach to weight loss and total wellness, including an evidence-based food plan with a focus on increasing nutrient density, and an evidence-based exercise and physical activity guideline plan. And the program also provides a community component for accountability, encouragement, and support, plus that vital spiritual component to advocate the development of a healthier relationship with food, especially important when medication is continued and that food noise returns.
All right, I'm going to put us in gallery mode so everybody can see all three of us. We have two questions that came in really early on. If you have any other questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A now. But I'm going to start with the first one. It says, we are taught in First Place for Health that we shouldn't skip meals. This will affect our metabolism. Also, don't eat when you're not hungry. I'm on Mounjaro, and I'm not always hungry when it's mealtime. How do I handle this?
Well, I would say that first of all, it's going to be important to get all the calories that are in your plan. So like if you're following the 13 to 1400 calorie plan, sometimes you will need to eat to make sure that you get all the nutrition that you need. So you may not always be hungry. It's on these medications just because of how they act, how they work in our bodies. So it's a little bit different rule than when you're not taking the medications, because we
Right.
do want to learn how to listen to our food cues when we're not taking medications. But those food cues, maybe those hunger cues, are so depressed, I guess. Would that be the right word, Susan? That we may not be getting a normal, and you need to unmute again. So I would say try to work them in and just split it up into several meals in the day if you need to. But you want to keep your metabolism working. So don't skip.
Another thing that you already said, Charlotte, is that one element that I thought was so interesting about putting your protein first. So if your appetite is low, then make sure you are eating those really nutrient dense foods first. Get your proteins, get your healthy grains, get your healthy fats.
Cool. Thanks, ladies. All right. The next question is what they missed the thing about compound forms, and they just wanted to see, could you explain compounds, what that means? I think Susan talked about that.
So compounded medications are medications that are made in a compounding pharmacy. They are not made by the big company that makes Wegovy or Zepbound. And so while a compounding pharmacist can manufacture what is supposed to be the same as like the active ingredients in these medications,
Yeah.
it really is unregulated. I asked my primary care some doctors some questions about this, and he has big concerns about where some of the compounded drugs come from. He wasn't real concerned about, he has used compound pharmacies, but they're down the street from his office. He knows the pharmacist. He knows how those medications are being manufactured in that pharmacy versus something that is coming from another country that is really unregulated.
Thank you. All right. The next one is my doctor just recommended Monjaro today to help lower my blood sugars. Would a dietitian be helpful?
I would say most definitely, because regulating that medication along with whatever calorie level and carbohydrate distribution that you need is going to be critical. So definitely ask for a referral. A lot of doctors, they'll tell you that they don't have a lot of nutrition training, and they'll be honest about that. But just ask to be referred, and then having someone who works one-on-one with you is always really good. A dietitian that's been trained, and there's certified diabetes educators out there. I don't have that level I'm not, I haven't worked in that area recently, but there are lots of dietitians who have that extra credential of being a certified diabetes educator, which is even better. So if you can find one of those, that'd be awesome.
Another question is, are there medical conditions that you should not take these drugs? And I think, Susan, you did share a list of some of them, I believe.
So yeah, the contraindications where you should not take them at all are either a personal or family history of medullary thyroid cancer. And then there's a list of neoplasias. I don't have those right in front of me. And then if you've ever had pancreatitis, you should not consider taking them.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take the next two. So one of the questions is, does First Place for Health feel the same way about these drugs as it does about weight loss surgery? And then another person said, do we have any idea how many people are currently on GLP-1 meds? So the answer is, we don't know the answer to any of those questions because we are a ministry. And as many of you know, we just are here to support you and your community for wellness. There are many people that come to First Place that have had weight loss surgery, that are on weight loss drugs,
that are struggling with many different medical conditions. Or maybe you were like me and I didn't have a medical condition. I just was obese at 274. And so the answer for us is we don't there whatever your doctor recommends, we want to support you in whatever your medical professional is recommending. All of our materials say check with your doctor first. And so I just want to just say there is no we're not we have no judgment. We there's enough judgment in the world. That is not what we are about. We are about here to help you put Christ first and follow his leading in your life. And we always will recommend that you contact your medical professional and you have these discussions with your medical professional, depending on what you are. And we welcome anyone that is seeking a wellness way, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. So I just want to say all of us are welcome, just like Jesus would welcome anybody. All are welcome, and we are here to help you. And if I can't say that enough, I can't say that enough. We're all welcome, and we want to help you wherever you are. And I know that some people are kind of like keep it a secret or whatever. It doesn't matter. We're here to help you eat right. And if you haven't heard anything today, you have heard that eating right and picking the right nutrition for your body and what you need, it doesn't matter where you are. It's necessary to have a long faith-fueled life. So that's really where we're going here. So I just wanted to say, welcome everyone, and we're here to help everybody. And really, it's all about Jesus. It's about Jesus. So the last thing one of the things, I'm going to wrap it up here because we're kind of getting out of time, but the talking about a lot of stuff on social media and how different people look. And so I don't know if that's a thing to talk about, but there is a lot of pressure by the world. I didn't know if either one of you wanted to say anything about that.
Completely non-scientific, but some of my personal feelings is that with these medications, are our expectations of what we're supposed to look like going to get worse? We're here to help people be their healthiest and not meet some sort of ideal body shape or look. And I do have concerns for what the medications might put additional pressures on people that really aren't warranted.
Amen. Well, today's we have some other questions that I'm not going to answer because a lot of them are very specific, and I would tell you need to do your own research, and we're not here to give you medical advice or of course that really is something between your professional. And yes, Charlotte is a registered dietitian, but oftentimes having your doctor refer you to a nutritionist or a registered dietitian can be very beneficial at looking at your labs, your situation, your activity level. So I do encourage you, many times it's covered by our insurance. We just don't know to ask. So I would encourage all of you to talk to your physician, your nurse's assistant, your family doctor about that. And so I just want to thank Charlotte and Susan. I also want to mention we are going to come out with a position paper, just wanting people to say, and that's something that you'll see in one of our newsletters. And we just want to encourage, again, everyone, God is here to help us. We're here to help one another, and all are welcome. And we want to be on this wellness journey with you. And so thank you, thank you, thank you for all the interest. And let me say a prayer for all of us. Jesus, Father God, Holy Spirit, I thank you for loving us so much that you want us to be as well, to love you with all our heart, with all our soul, and to love you with all our mind and our strength. Lord, help each of us on our own personal journey as we seek to place you first in all things. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.